The new United States of America was established after decades of conflict and a war against the most powerful nation on earth. The Philadelphia Convention of 1787 decided the government would be a republic, a representative democracy with aspirations well beyond the reality of the world of March 4th, 1789, when the new Constitution came into effect. When many citizens expressed concern that this new central government would have too much power, James Madison proposed and the first Congress adopted 10 amendments to the Constitution designed to protect the rights of the states and the people. Those amendments, called the Bill of Rights, were ratified on December 15, 1791. The Bill of Rights was aimed at ensuring that the new government acted responsibly, but the founders never doubted that the citizens had responsibilities as well. Over time, Americans came to realize that those duties included extending the rights of the Declaration of Independence to millions of Americans long denied them, including African Americans, Latino, Asian, and Native Americans, and women of all backgrounds. Courageous citizens like James Forten, sailor, veteran, entrepreneur, businessman, and abolitionist, was one of the first to speak out in order to remind Congress that the promise of this new experiment in self-government, the benefits by the modern world's first democracy, did not apply equally to all.
We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Very strong and powerful words, quite poetic in its form, and yet they lack a sense of hope, peace, and joy for a race of people who have done you no harm. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We the people. What people?
The First Amendment and the Bill of Rights made it possible for James Forten, a free black man, to speak out and be heard. Thanks to the First Amendment's protection of the freedoms of speech, petition, and assembly, citizens like Forten could speak out, petition their members of Congress, and assemble in groups to discuss how to change the law to extend the blessings of liberty to all citizens equally. In our nation's history, citizens have been the catalyst of change that brought about new laws, helping to form a society that extends liberty to all. For those who fought for the abolition of slaves and the equal rights of women, it would take years of speeches and letters, and in the case of slavery, a civil war, to bring about change in how the protections and benefits of the Constitution were applied to the American people.
I'm told we have 20,000 signatures on this petition to the New York State Legislature in order to restore property rights to married women. And we will continue to petition the state and local and federal legislatures until the natural and political rights of women are fully restored and protected. We've had meetings, lectures, assemblies, conventions, all to promote the cause of freeing the Negro slaves and giving equal rights to all women.
Activist and reformer Sojourner Truth, a former slave, used her right to petition the government for the redress of wrong, as the First Amendment states, regularly. When her son Peter was sold illegally to a slaveholder in Alabama, Sojourner went to the courts. There she petitioned the judge for the return of her son, and she won. Later in life, in the midst of the Civil War, she would petition the president himself, Abraham Lincoln, directly on behalf of all slaves and former slaves.
I remember the time I went on down to Washington, D.C. to advise President Lincoln what to do with the former slaves in that area. Well, first they didn't want me to go. They said, Sojourner, you got no business in Washington, D.C. Because you see, back then, the women folk didn't speak out in public at all. But I said, I got something important to talk to the president about. So I'm going on down to Washington, D.C. When I got to Washington, D.C., there was a long line waiting to meet the president. I waited in line too. The first day they didn't see me. I guess they thought I was going to go away. But I came back the second day, waited in line to wait my turn to meet the president. When it was my turn, I shook the hand of the president. He greeted me right cordial-like, invited me to come in and sit down. And I said, ain't that something? Me and President Lincoln sitting in the White House sipping tea. Now, ain't that something? And President Lincoln, he signed my little book right here. He says, for Auntie Sojourner Truth, A. Lincoln, October 29, 1864. Now it says, Auntie Sojourner, what you suggest I do with the former slaves down here in the Washington, D.C. area? I said, well, President Lincoln, here's what we need.
A democratic republic like the United States offers many opportunities to petition the government, both formally through the courts and informally through those who represent you in government. Susan B. Anthony, one of the nation's great reformers, advocated for the abolition of slavery and equal rights for all American citizens, be they women, former slaves, or other minorities. She used the right of assembly to great effect, crisscrossing the country to speak at rallies and conventions about her passionate belief in equality.
Our democratic government is based on the idea of the natural right of each individual member to have a voice in making and executing the laws. We assert the province of government to be to secure the people in enjoyment of their unalienable rights. We throw to the winds the old dogma that governments can give rights. Before governments were organized, no one questioned the right of an individual to protect property or life or happiness. And when people enter into a free government, they do not barter away their own natural rights. They simply pledge themselves to protect each other in the enjoyment of them through judicial and legislative processes. Nor can you find a word in any of the grand documents left to us by the framers that assumes for government the power to create or confer rights. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of all the states and territories, all alike propose to protect people in the exercise of their God-given rights. Not one of them pretends to bestow rights. The Declaration of Independence rightly asserts that we are all created equal and endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Here is no shadow of government authority over rights, nor exclusion of any class of citizens from their full and equal enjoyment. The Declaration goes on to say, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Surely, the right of the whole people to vote is here clearly implied, for however destructive to their happiness this government might become, a disenfranchised class could neither alter nor abolish it, nor institute a new one. 1/2 of the people of this nation today are utterly powerless to blot from the statute books an unjust law or to write a new and a just one. The women, dissatisfied as they are with this form of government that enforces taxation without representation, that compels them to obey laws that they have had no voice in giving, are half the people who are left wholly at the mercy of the other half in direct violation of the spirit and letter of the declarations of the framers of this government, every one of which was based on the immutable principle of equal rights for all.
When the first Congress gathered in Philadelphia in 1789 to pass the Bill of Rights, they not only protected the rights of its citizens. By enshrining the rights of petition and assembly in the First Amendment, the founders put in place a mechanism by which the nation's republic would always be accountable to the people. So it is that the rights of petition and assembly, coupled with the right to free speech, have helped to extend the promise of the Declaration of Independence, that promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to more people throughout history, continuing even today.